Hello, welcome to Handling After School Meltdowns. I'm Sarah Nowak and this is Irene Denbach-Lammers, and we are going to be talking today about that time after school. You're hoping to bring home this ray of sunshine kiddo. They've been gone for the day. Maybe you've missed them. Certainly they've probably missed you in some form or another. And what walks off the bus or through the school doors is, a little bit more of a kiddo who either melts into a puddle, they whirl through like a hurricane and there's nothing you can do to kind of contain that energy, or they're just like generally having a dark cloud hang around them. So today we're going to talk some practical strategies and understanding why this might be coming about. Remember, we don't know your specific kids. These are ideas in general. So use what you know as the expert on your own kid or the child that you're thinking about today with the ideas we're talking about to see what might be a good fit. Obviously, talking to people who know your child personally is a great way to think about which of these strategies are going to be most relevant and useful in your home.
All right, so we're speaking about that window between coming home from school and dinner. And so the meltdowns can sometimes happen right away, or they might come an hour or so later, but they generally come within that window. And there's a big contrast between their school behavior, where they seem composed and they're well behaved and working hard, and they're what we call the after school collapse. So you may find yourself saying things like, I hope you don't act this way for Mrs. Jones, or I hope you don't treat your friends like at school like this. So what are we looking at? So we're looking at anger, low frustration tolerance. We're looking at children who are very easily annoyed or bothered. And so if they have siblings, they could be pressing each other's buttons that result in "Mom," or "Stop that." And sometimes the kids can be weepy, and sometimes they can just be very quiet. Sometimes the children are rude or disrespectful to yourself or to each other, to their siblings or to other people in their household. And we find that this varies from child to child as to how much this happens. And in some kids, it doesn't happen at all. But the children who seem to be more susceptible are the highly sensitive or intense kids. So it's sort of a temperament style for them, that sensory and environmental sensitivities set them off a little bit quicker than for other kids. It can happen with our children for whom school is much harder. So children with learning disabilities or ADHD or ASD, those kinds of diagnoses, kids with those kinds of diagnoses have a harder time at school. So while they're at school, even though they might be well behaved at school, they're working harder at school and have more stress in that respect. It also can happen to our children who have what we call additional life stressors happening to them. So that a family member might be sick, or there's a new baby in the house, or they moved recently, or a parent is away on business or away for some reason. And also when as children experience some teacher changes throughout the school year. And we're thinking, with this level of stress, it's like we've got enough on our plate. Now we have to deal with this. So in the after school meltdowns can peak at the beginning of the year or during times of stress. And they're warning signs. They can be warning signs also of upcoming illness or social and academic challenges that they need additional support with.
So there's two main kind of categories that we're going to talk about today about why these after school meltdowns might be happening in your home. There's likely more, you know your kiddos best, but how I tend to think of them is first around a possibility that there's some attachment difficulties happening, and not because there's a global attachment difficulty happening, but in those moments. So that after school meltdown can be a function of their attachment system. It's saying, I needed you today. I did hard things all by myself and you weren't there. So now I'm going to push you away first, right? It's a bit of a, I'm going to get you before you can hurt me way of doing things. Kids aren't going to articulate it like this, right? It's a protective mechanism that their body is just going through. But it's often the essence of what's happening for them. And we as the adults with our most fully formed prefrontal cortexes know that, you know, our attachment now in the moment could be really helpful, but sometimes it's hard for them to really take advantage of that in the moment. The second realm of what might be going on is what I call cup malfunction. This is totally not like a real word or definition, but in this case, what I'm thinking of it as is that if we pictured our kiddos with a system of cups in their body that they were constantly trying to keep at optimum levels, right? When they get off the bus, there's a good chance that one or more of those cups could use a little support. So there may be cups overflowing from the day, right? Maybe too much stimulation, too much noise, too much smell, too much learning for some of them. I know after a day at a conference, like my brain is all done. I cannot take in anymore. And there may be cups that are running low, or they're just totally empty. Maybe they're hungry, thirsty, their energy is depleted. And oftentimes there's that connection cup that can feel sometimes depleted by the end of the day. And that's where these two kind of ideas cross over. And then they may not say it, although some of them do, that they can miss you during the day, and they've gone out and they've done it all on their own for 6.5 hours, sometimes more for our kiddos that spend some time with a babysitter or an extended day. And now they're ready for that refuge of mom, dad, grandma, babysitter, whoever their caring adult is, that's a really important step for them in the day as they figure out what to do next. But those are kind of the two ideas we're going to think about from a practical way of how do we manage these in our home when in a lot of cases they inevitably come up.
So there is an actual silver lining to these after school meltdowns, and that's that the children feel safe and comfortable with you. When they're at school all day long, they can't let out some of their emotions. There's like a pressure cooker and a little bit of steam lets out here and there as you're cooking, but at school they know they have to be very well behaved, and they can't let that out. So then they come home with all of this stress, and this is a safe place for them. And so as much as we do not like to have to deal with these meltdowns, because they can be challenging and they disrupt our day and stuff like that, it's the silver lining is that they feel safe and comfortable with you, and they believe that you can handle it because you've handled it in the past. And they know that you will love them regardless. And because at school, they might worry about losing friends if they misbehave or if they behave in a bad way, or the teacher can't handle it or doesn't handle it well or whatever. But they come home to you and they know you're going to be there for them, and they know you're going to love them regardless. And so this is actually a good thing for you and your child, because the child feels safe, and that's where they will let go some of the steam that's been building up throughout the day.
And I don't know about you, Irene, but I know when my kiddos inevitably have after school meltdowns, sometimes kind of holding that idea of like, okay, my kid is giving this to me because they want my help with it and they know I can handle it, right? So holding that mantra just keeps me in a place of like, okay, mom, you got this. Put your plan aside because your kiddo needs you in this moment, right? And that keeps me in a parenting space that's going to be more helpful for my kiddo. And of course, depending on what's going on in our life, and we'll talk about that later, that's going to change kind of how much we can hold that idea. But this silver lining piece is what helps me really personally keep that even keel when my kiddos need it up when they get off the bus some days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're now going to get practical and give you some suggestions and ideas. And we've kind of grouped them into these 4 areas of connection, replenish, and we want to talk about whether or not to screen or not screen, and then also managing our own, what we call, so in the research, they call these after school meltdowns, after school restraint collapse. And so we can recognize that sometimes it happens to us too.
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. First thing we want to think about is building that connection, right? So whether it's their defensive mechanisms like kicking in, or the fact that maybe their connection cup is feeling a little empty at the end of the day, there are some ways that we can bridge this connection across the daytime absence that can be really helpful for a lot of kiddos. Sometimes this part is really confusing for parents, especially if we have kiddos that don't want to go to school in the first place. It's like, this morning, all you wanted to do was like stay home with me. And now you're like wanting nothing to do with me now that you're home. So it can feel like, like I can't win no matter what I do, right? So being a bit proactive in that, thinking like saying things like what you'll do together when you're back together at the end of the day. Oh, looking forward to taco night when you get home, or oh, like going to be so great to take you to karate, whatever it might be, helping bridge that morning piece to when you're going to see them again. So oftentimes we jump to, oh, school's going to be great today. You're going to do this fun thing. And for some kiddos, they actually need us to kind of hip hop over top of that and remind them of when they're going to be back with you again, or when they're going to be home in their safe refuge of quiet and peacefulness again. The other thing we can do is to think about transitional objects or rituals that are helpful for bridging that daytime connection. So the picture there is actually some bracelets that we made when my daughter was going into kindergarten, because she was very, very worried about being away from us for the day. And we used the invisible string book. Many of you may be aware of it, about how we're all connected to our loved ones through an invisible string. So we all had these bracelets and we wore them, I would say, like into November of JK, where this was important to her that we all had that on. That included her brother that went to preschool, but it was a way for her to bridge and have that tangible, concrete connection to us during that day. Pocket Full of Kisses is another wonderful children's book. If you have younger kiddos, to think about how to bridge that day. Notes in the lunchbox. I remember another time in my child's development, she just had a picture of us in her agenda. It was always there. It was, she could have it on her desk, flip to it whenever she needed to, because that was important for her for bridging that connection. So those are things we would do kind of at the beginning of the day. I also want us to think about reunification. What happens when the kiddo comes back to you at the end of the day? Obviously, we want to greet them warmly, smile and a hug if that's something that your kiddo likes. I say often save the questions, right? They get in the car, they get off the bus. How was your day? How was this? How was that? And we kind of overload them with information. So sometimes we just need to pause on those questions. Maybe they come later, or maybe we scrap them all together. If there's something important, hopefully your child will bring it up on their own, but you know them best. And then of course, be that safe space, validate their feelings. Wow, I see it's been a big day. I'm here for a hug if you'd like it. And hold off on the problem solving a little bit. I know we often really want to, sometimes our kiddos get off the bus and they just start telling us all the terrible things of the day. So-and-so said this, I didn't get to participate in that. And in a way, they're venting it all out to you, right? And we want to make that better for our kiddos. We want to make them comfortable with that. But again, I'd ask you to maybe hold off a little bit on that, validate those feelings, so that they can also share with you how they solved those problems. Or you can ask more questions about how they handled that. Wow, that sounded like a really tough situation. Tell me about what you did, and building up that self-efficacy about how they do manage their day. Because some of our kiddos who have meltdowns after school, they feel like they can't handle the day on their own, and they're coming home and releasing that all to you. So when we build up those self-efficacy feelings of how they managed it, that builds that support for the day. And they go into the next day going, yeah, okay, I got this. Mom said I could do it yesterday. Look, and I'm going to do it again today. So really kind of holding off on some of that problem solving for them. Oh, I'm going to email the teacher and I'm going to do this. And sometimes we just need to give those a little bit more space and validate what efforts our kiddos have made to tackle the day on their own. Of course, letting them know that you were thinking about them during the day. You know, while I was driving to work today, I thought about that game of catch we had on the weekend and it was so fun. I hope we can do that again soon. It lets them know that you don't go to work and forget about them, or you're not going about whatever your daily business is and kind of forgetting that they're part of your life. Our kids, depending on their age, are not always great at perspective taking. So reminding them that you're thinking about them helps keep that connection piece strong. And this is the one that people are probably not going to like, and that's okay. But sometimes we got to let the meltdowns happen, right? Depending on the age of your kiddo and their comfort, like hold them, sit with them, let them know that you're available. Tears themselves actually release cortisol. It's emptying that overwhelmed cup while also filling up the connection cup when we let them know that they're there. Some kiddos need that release at the end of the day. But an important part of this is, yes, all feelings are okay, right? We can handle all of our kids' big feelings, but we may need to set boundaries on behavior, right? It's not a free for all meltdown, right? You can say, I can see you're really frustrated right now. I see that in your face and how you're kicking your backpack around. You know, I don't want you to hurt yourself or your bag, so I'm going to move it out of the way. Or, you know, those hands, they feel like hitting right now. They're so frustrated. Let's hold hands together because I don't want you to hurt your hands or anyone else. You know, hurting is not okay. And so we can still set those kind, firm expectations and boundaries on behavior while allowing all the feelings to find their space. So when our kiddos can see consistently that their trusted adults can handle their big feelings, often those feelings don't actually feel so big. So when we do allow our kiddos to have these meltdowns, work through them with the trusted adult and have it not become a big deal, they realize that, oh, well, mom could handle it, grandma could handle it, and they learn to handle it as well. That's that co-regulation process that we want for all of our kiddos to build up self-regulation over time. And then as the meltdown's coming to an end, you know, you close that loop. You let them know you love them no matter what. You're glad they felt safe to share their feelings. And then later on, when they're calm, when they're out of that emotional brain and into logical thinking brain, that's when you can do some brainstorming of what you might do differently next time, right? I wonder if you were really hungry after school today, what could we do different? Or, I wonder what that was all about. And getting curious with our kiddos in those moments so that, you know, maybe we can preempt the next one a little bit more. The other thing that I love to do, again, just in my own home, because some of my kiddos have experienced these themselves, is what I think of as acts of service. Sometimes our kiddos need a little bit of something from us at the end of the day, not because we don't hold expectations for them, but like for an example, I remember my one kiddo coming home from kindergarten, and he would literally get off the bus and backpack drop. He could not even handle bringing his backpack home. And my first reaction was, pick up that backpack. Like, that's not a big deal. Like, we live one house down. You can handle it. And on the days when I reacted like that, usually we had a meltdown coming. On days where I was like, wow, that bag looks really heavy. Let me grab that for you. Oh yeah, definitely feels like it was a library day. And, you know, did that act of service for him in a way that just let him know, like, okay, I see this is too much for you today. Doing that was enough for him to go, okay, like, and eventually he didn't have to, you know, come off and drop it. You know, he might pass it to me, or mom, would you mind carrying my backpack today? And over time that grew into something that was more what we would consider like an appropriate behavior. But it was, he needed that little transition time where I could provide some active service, because backpacks aren't heavy. I could handle it, but he needed that transition time in order to do that. And all our kids, of course, are different and responsive to different strategies. So finding what works for one of your kiddos might be different than another one of your kiddos, but definitely important kind of detective work for you as parents and caring adults to think about what your kiddo might need in that connection way before and after school.
And so some more in terms of some physical change, physical strategies, looking at rest, replenish, and play. So in terms of rest, yeah, the kids have been at school for like 5 to 6 hours in the day, and they're busy learning. And then at nutrition break, they're hopefully running around a bit and stuff. And so their energy level will be depleted. And so we have to be careful on, and it depends on their age and personality a bit, but be careful how much, what our expectations for after school are. So don't sign them up for too many extracurricular activities that happen during this window of time between home time and supper time. So limit some plans and expectations and make lots of time for snuggle time. And some kids may even just need a 10-15 minute nap to replenish themselves. Replenish, definitely, it's been at least an hour or two since they had nutrition break. And some of them may not have eaten enough during nutrition break because they were so busy socializing. They come home and they're going to be famished. And so so making sure that there's time for a snack and a drink of some water or whatever, that blood sugar level is fluctuating for them. And then giving them time to play. Play is the children's natural antidote to stress. Whether it's outdoor, whether it's physical or creative, whether it's with others or by themselves. And you can follow their lead on this because it would vary from day to day, but sometimes they want to play with their parents, and that's a nice connecting time. And this is where they can empty the stress cup and fill the attachment cup all at once. And I just want to share a story from my life. My oldest is now in university, but back when I can't remember whether it was grade 2 or 3, she'd come home and I would have, okay, it's homework time and piano practice time, and you need to do this. And yeah, there'd be those meltdowns and lack of cooperation around that. And at some point I kind of thought, this is ridiculous. She's just finished 5 hours of school. Does she really need to go right at it right away? And so we stopped that. Homework didn't get done until after supper. And so she had pure play time, do whatever you want time between home time and supper time. Now it helped with the homework piece, because she did go back to her homework and without complaints and stuff. The piano practicing was another issue. We eventually dropped that from her plate altogether. So you can think ahead of time what kinds of expectations you have and what kinds of strategies. And with regards to little chores that they come home, maybe you do have the expectation, you come in the door, you hang up your backpack, or you take your lunchbox to the kitchen. You can have some of those kinds of things and gradually introduce them into the expectations. But make sure there's lots of time for snuggling, and the snack comes fairly quickly so that they can replenish some of that energy level. And then, yeah, it's all about knowing your child and what they can handle and what they need at that time.
So one thing I like to remind myself of is, like, does it actually truly matter to the whole of our life if they hang up their backpack immediately or after the snack? Because, like, the mom, like, not messy house part of me says, like, just hang it up right away. But sometimes, like, if they're going to go back to do it and do it after, really no harm done in the way that our household is running. It's often a lot more peaceful. And then over time, they learn that, oh, I could just do it now and then I don't have to come back to it. But sometimes that takes time.
And it's also kind of knowing that we might not be able to teach them that routine right now because it's the new school year and it's new to them. But then once you've mastered or gotten a handle on these meltdowns, then you can say, okay, now that we know how this is going to go, let's now introduce the expectation that the backpacks have to be hung up or that the lunch boxes have to be emptied or whatever it is that you want them to do.
Absolutely. So one particular strategy that we think warrants some further discussion, and we have no right or wrong way in our belief here about how to do this, but we do want you to think purposefully about screen use in these after school hours, about whether that's something that's being helpful or less helpful in your home in that time. So, and certainly if your child's turning on a screen the moment they walk through the door, you're definitely not alone on that. That's very popular after school activity in my house, as well as many others. But for the kiddo who's experiencing after school meltdowns, we want to think about, what is this screen doing for them? And there's a couple things that may be happening. These are hypotheses based on other people's experiences. So you might want to think about what's happening for your kiddos. But certainly this screen can be an external regulator, right? It keeps the lid on all those overflowing cups, but only until something else crops up, right? So if all those cups are a little bit out of whack, tech malfunctions and it's not working, they lose their game, or now it's dinner time and they're being told to turn it off. They've just kept those cups up, cups lidded for the next little bit. And once those things happen, sometimes the after school meltdown that happens at that point, it can be even more severe than it would have been otherwise. Oftentimes screens, they can provide a temporary distraction from their internal distress signals, right? For kids who are hungry, thirsty, have to go to the bathroom, they don't always recognize these internal signals while the screen is regulating them. So they're not able to take care of some of those needs that would really help them feel well in the after school hours. And again, most of the time, the cups that we're thinking about are not getting remediated through this activity. So if we don't address these underlying pieces, we could end up with a worse meltdown kind of after the fact. It might just be a kind of a temporary placeholder. And that's where we want to think about, when would it be helpful? And sometimes we need it as a temporary placeholder, right? Maybe as a parent, you truly need that 10 extra minutes to decompress from your day, get that snack together, whatever it might be, so that you're in a place where you can handle whatever the big feelings are. Because if you're not ready to handle them and they let them out anyways, we might end up with a bit of a challenging situation. So sometimes that placeholder activity can be really helpful. If your kids are very used to this activity and you do want to make a change, you might want to think about how you wean it, how you make it kind of less over time. Some families like the hard and fast, we're not going to do screens after school anymore, and that works for them, but others need to kind of do it gradually or find a replacement activity. We're going out to the park instead. That's great coming into spring, whenever that actually shows up. Then the other way we might want to be using them, if this is an activity that you and your child love, is to use it as a way to replenish the cups. So maybe it is a favorite show that your kiddo loves. During that, they have a snack, they have a snuggle with you, some of that connection time that you are in fact purposely filling those cups and making those adjustments to their day.
And so just as the children are experiencing these after school meltdowns or after school restraint collapse, we as adults can also experience after work restraint collapse. My day can be pretty full some days, and I get the end of the day and I am just exhausted, and I just don't have the energy to look after my kids. And so this is where self-awareness is really important. And I can't emphasize that enough. It's self-awareness. And so think for yourself, are you ready for their feelings just before they come home? Do something for yourself that will help you get ready to be able to handle their meltdowns. Feel about how you're rested and replenish your cups, if you need a snack or whatever. Think about what's in your control to do, how you're going to let this happen, or how you're going to, what strategies are you going to use? Be forethinking in all of this. And be careful that you don't take their behavior personally. They're not doing this to make you upset or to push your buttons. They are generally not great perspective takers, and so they're not thinking about you at all. They're just in their own moment. And so it's not about you, it's just about them. And so use some of these strategies to develop that connection with your child and to help them. Basically, we call it co-regulation. You use your ability to regulate yourself to help the child regulate themselves.
Just on time, 12:45 here. So we are done with our prepared material around after school meltdowns. We are happy to stay for a few more minutes. I'm going to turn off the recording